We saw a figure hanging upside down from a branch, swaying without wind. At first it looked like a trick of distance, the way deep woods bend shapes and swallow depth. The forest around us was thick with hemlock and pine, their trunks so close together they seemed to grow out of each other. Late afternoon light barely touched the ground. Everything beneath the canopy existed in a dim, green-gray twilight. Marcus stopped walking. "Do you see that?" he whispered. I did. About 40 yards ahead, past a narrow tangle of roots and fallen branches, something hung from one of the higher limbs of a crooked birch tree. It dangled head down, legs hooked around the branch, body swaying slowly as if underwater. But the air was completely still. The forest had that heavy quiet you only notice once you stop moving, the kind where even insects seem reluctant to make noise. We had come out here because Marcus swore the old logging road still existed. According to him, it would cut our hike back to the highway in half. But the road had disappeared hours ago, swallowed by moss and roots and 100 years of regrowth. Now the woods felt older than either of us had expected. "Probably someone messing around," Marcus said, though his voice lacked conviction. The figure rotated slightly. It wore something pale, maybe a shirt. Long sleeves hung toward the ground. Its arms dangled loosely beneath its head like ropes. No movement of breathing, no effort to hold itself up, just swaying. "Hey!" Marcus called. The sound died in the trees. The woods swallowed it. No answer. We stepped a little closer. The temperature seemed to drop as we moved downhill toward the birch. My breath fogged faintly in front of me, even though it had been warm on the ridge minutes earlier. "You feel that?" I asked. Marcus nodded. Cold gathered around the tree like invisible water. The hanging figure turned again. I noticed something then that made my stomach tighten. Its hair, long and dark, hung straight toward the ground, perfectly vertical, but the body swayed. Hair should move with the motion. Didn't. Marcus noticed too. "That's weird," he muttered. We got within 20 yards before the smell reached us. Wet leaves, rotting bark, and something sour underneath. The figure slowly twisted until its face pointed toward us. I wish it hadn't. At that distance we could see enough. The face looked stretched somehow, the skin pale and tight like old paper. The eyes were open but dull, reflecting almost no light. Its mouth hung slack, but the jaw was bent slightly to one side, as if broken long ago. "Jesus," Marcus whispered. The body swayed again. The movement was wrong. It didn't swing from the branch like a pendulum. It bent in the middle, as if something inside the torso were shifting the weight. I stepped back. Marcus stayed frozen. Then the figure blinked. Not slowly, not groggily, sharp, focused, and both eyes locked directly onto Marcus. The forest around us seemed to exhale. Branches creaked somewhere deeper in the woods. Something moved. Not near us, far away, but large. Marcus took a step back. Okay, that's not normal." The figure's fingers twitched. They were long, too long. The joints bent the wrong way. The arms lifted slightly toward the branch, except they didn't grip it. They moved independently as if testing the air. The body stopped swaying. Perfectly still now. Even the hair remained motionless. Then it spoke. The sound came from its mouth, but it didn't sound like language. It was more like a breath dragged through dry leaves. A whispering scrape. My skin prickled instantly. Marcus turned toward me. "We should go." But behind us the woods had changed. I swear they had. The path we'd followed down the slope no longer looked familiar. Trees leaned at new angles. Fallen branches blocked spaces that had been clear seconds earlier. And the silence had deepened. No birds, no wind, just that whispering noise above us. The figure's head turned slowly. Not toward the branch, not toward the forest, toward the sky. Its mouth opened wider. The whispering sound deepened into something wet and guttural. And from somewhere high above us, branches moved. Marcus looked up first. His breath left him in a thin scream. Shapes hung in the higher canopy. Dozens of them. Maybe more. At first they looked like lumps of moss or tangled vines. Then one of them shifted, upside down. Another turned. Pale faces, empty eyes, bodies wrapped around branches like enormous bats. They hadn't been visible before. Or maybe we just hadn't looked high enough. The one above the birch twisted its spine with a soft cracking sound. Then it began to climb, still upside down, hands gripping bark, feet dragging behind its head. Marcus grabbed my arm. Run! But the whispering spread. All around us, from every tree, bodies uncoiled slowly from the branches, unfolding in jerky, insect-like movements. Their limbs stretched longer than human arms should stretch. They watched us, not hungry, not angry, curious. The first one dropped. It didn't land like a person. It folded wrong, limbs bending sideways before catching itself against the trunk. Then it climbed back up again. Testing, learning. The forest temperature kept dropping. My teeth started chattering. Marcus pulled me downhill. Behind us the whispering grew louder. Not random now. Rhythmic. Pattern. Almost like chanting. We stumbled through ferns and roots, branches scraping our arms. The woods seemed thicker than before, trees crowding together as if shifting to block our path. Then Marcus tripped. Hard. When he looked up, his face had drained of color. "Don't move," he said quietly. I followed his gaze. Another birch stood ahead of us, and hanging from it was the same figure, upside down, swaying slowly, the broken jaw, the paper-white skin, exactly the same, but we had left the first one behind. Marcus turned slowly in a circle. Through the trees we could see more. Every direction, every clearing. Another hanging body, some close, some deeper in the woods. Hundreds of them, swaying without wind, watching. Then the one nearest us opened its mouth, and spoke clearly this time. Not English, not any language I knew, but the sound was deliberate, calling, answering. The forest responded. All around us the bodies began climbing down, not in a rush, not hunting, just descending slowly from their branches. Marcus whispered, "What are they?" I didn't answer, because I had noticed something else. None of the bodies looked fresh. Their clothes were old, decades old. Some wore hiking packs. Some wore hunting jackets. Some looked like they'd been there for a very long time. And every face looked different. Different people. But the movement inside them, the thing shifting beneath their ribs, that felt the same. Ancient. Patient. Marcus grabbed my shoulder. "They're coming." They were. But not toward us. They were forming a circle. A wide one, closing in gradually. The one above the first birch twisted again, its spine popping softly. Then its head bent sideways until its eyes faced me directly. And it smiled. The mouth stretched too far. The skin around its cheeks tore slightly. Inside its throat something darker moved. Something with too many joints. Then I understood. The bodies weren't the creatures. They were just the branches. And the forest had been growing them for a very long time. The whispering became louder. Not from the creatures now. From the trees. The trunks creaked. Roots shifted under the soil like slow muscles tightening. Marcus backed away until he pressed against a pine. "I think," he whispered hoarsely, "they want us in the trees." One of the bodies reached the ground. Its limbs unfolded until it stood upright. Then it looked up, studying the branches above us, as if deciding where we would hang. And when the first one began climbing toward us, the rest of the forest started moving too. The deeper we walked, the more the trees resembled human silhouettes. At first it was subtle enough to ignore. A crooked trunk bent like a shoulder. A split branch that looked vaguely like arms held slightly away from a body. Forests do that sometimes, your mind filling in shapes where none exist. But after an hour on the trail, the resemblance stopped feeling accidental. The path we followed wasn't on any map. It had started as a faint line through moss and ferns, barely wide enough for one person. Now it stretched ahead in a straight corridor through trees that stood unnaturally evenly spaced, like quiet spectators. "Do these look weird to you?" Aaron asked. He didn't stop walking when he said it. None of us wanted to be the first to pause. I glanced left. A tall pine stood beside the trail. Its lower branches had died long ago, leaving only a narrow trunk that thickened near the top before splitting into two heavy limbs. It looked exactly like someone standing with their arms folded behind their back. "Just trees," I said, but the words felt thin in the heavy air. The forest had grown quieter the farther we walked. The normal sounds, birds, insects, wind, had faded until the only noise left was our footsteps pressing into damp soil. Even the light had changed. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in narrow beams that didn't seem to move with the breeze. Dust and pollen drifted through them slowly, like particles suspended underwater. Aaron slowed slightly. "You notice how straight the path is?" I had. "Natural trails curve. They wander around roots and rocks. This one didn't. It cut through the forest like something carved it deliberately, ignoring obstacles that should have forced it to bend. The ground itself seemed flattened in a precise strip ahead of us, like the forest had parted to let something walk through. "Maybe it's an old service road," I said. Aaron shook his head. "Roads don't feel like this." He was right. There was a pressure here, subtle but constant, the way the air feels before a storm, except the sky above us was perfectly clear. We walked another 20 minutes before Lena spoke. "Stop!" Her voice came out tight. We turned. She pointed back the way we'd come. "Do you remember that tree?" At first I didn't understand what she meant. Every direction was packed with trunks, gray and brown columns fading into the dim green distance. Then I saw the one she meant. About 15 yards behind us stood a tree that looked almost perfectly human. The trunk leaned slightly forward. Two thick branches curved downward like relaxed arms. A knot in the bark formed something disturbingly like the hollow of a throat. "What about it?" Aaron asked. Lena swallowed. "It was facing the other way." The three of us stared at it. The trunk tilted slightly to the left now, as if mid-step. Aaron laughed once under his breath, but it wasn't amusement. "Trees don't rotate." No one replied. We kept walking. The path stretched ahead in the same straight line. And the deeper we went, the more the trees began to look like people. Some leaned together like figures whispering. Others stood apart with branches hanging like long, tired arms. A few twisted in ways that looked painfully human, torsos bent as if frozen in the middle of movement. The silence thickened. I noticed the temperature dropping, even though the sunlight still filtered down in dull green shafts. My breath began to show faintly when I exhaled. Aaron noticed it too. "That's not normal," he muttered. The forest floor had changed as well. The moss was flattened in strange shapes, long oval depressions spaced evenly apart, like footprints left by something massive. Except the impressions didn't lead anywhere. They just existed. Lena suddenly stopped again. "Don't turn around yet," she whispered. Aaron and I froze. "What?" he asked quietly. "Just listen." We did. At first there was nothing. Then, a faint creak. Not wood bending in wind, more like joints shifting under weight, came from somewhere behind us. Slow, careful. I turned. The trees looked the same, except one of them had moved closer to the path. I knew it had. A tall shape with two heavy branches that curved forward slightly, like arms about to reach. Aaron saw it too. That wasn't there. The air felt colder now, and the light seemed dimmer, as if the canopy above had thickened without us noticing. We walked faster. The path continued straight, but something else changed. The trees were no longer random. They were arranged, standing in rows, facing the trail, every single one angled toward us. Watching, Lena let out a shaky breath. "Why do they all look like they're leaning forward?" I didn't answer, because she was right. The silhouettes along the path had begun to tilt inward, branches bending subtly toward the trail as though trying to see us more clearly. And when we walked past them, they seemed to straighten, like observers stepping back into place. Aaron stopped abruptly. Okay, that's enough. What? Lena asked. He pointed at the ground ahead. The path ended. Or rather, it continued, but now the soil had changed. Instead of moss or dirt, the ground was bare and gray, packed flat like clay. In the center of it stood a single tree. It was enormous. Its trunk was wide enough that the three of us together couldn't have wrapped our arms around it. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was its shape. The trunk divided near the middle into two massive limbs that curved outward like shoulders. Smaller branches extended from them like arms, fingers of bark reaching upward. And the upper trunk formed a shape unmistakably like a head tilted toward the sky. It looked like a colossal human figure rooted into the earth. Lena whispered, "This is wrong." The air around the tree felt colder than anywhere else in the forest. And the silence here was absolute. Aaron stepped closer. "Maybe lightning hit it once," he said weakly. "Or disease or—" The sound cut him off. A shifting scrape behind us. Then another. We turned. The trees along the path were moving. Not walking, not quite, but their silhouettes were changing. Trunks bending, branches lowering, their shapes becoming more defined, more human. One leaned forward until its branches hung like arms at its sides. Another curved at the middle like a spine straightening. The forest was rearranging itself, studying us. Aaron backed away from the giant tree. "They're copying us." I felt it too. Every movement we made seemed to echo in the shapes around us. When Lena lifted her arm to point, a branch somewhere deeper in the woods bent upward in the same angle. When Aaron stepped back, a tree behind him leaned slightly forward. They were learning posture, learning balance, learning form. The massive tree in the clearing groaned. The sound vibrated through the soil beneath our feet. Slowly, so slowly we almost didn't notice, the upper trunk tilted downward. Toward us, the head-shaped crown angled as if looking directly at the three of us. Lena's voice trembled. "It's watching." The bark along its trunk split slightly. Not like a crack, more like skin stretching. Aaron grabbed my sleeve. "Look at the ground." I did. The gray soil around the tree was covered in old depressions. Hundreds of them. Footprints. Human footprints. All facing the same direction. Toward the massive trunk. None leading away. A low creaking sound spread through the forest behind us. When I turned again, the silhouettes along the path had changed completely. They no longer looked vaguely human. Now they looked almost perfect. Rows of tall shapes with branch arms hanging loosely at their sides. Heads tilted. Bodies leaning slightly forward. Watching us the way people watch animals in a cage. The giant tree shifted again. Its enormous branches bent slowly downward, like arms lowering after centuries of stiffness. And I realized something that made my stomach twist. The trees hadn't been copying us. They'd been practicing, for a very long time, trying to remember what people look like. The forest creaked louder. All around us, trunks straightened, branches lifted, thousands of wooden silhouettes adjusting themselves into more accurate shapes, more human. And somewhere deep in the woods, something massive took its first step. The ground trembled. Aaron whispered hoarsely, "We need to run." But the path behind us was gone. Where it had been, rows of human-shaped trees now stood shoulder to shoulder, perfectly still, waiting. And as the giant tree in the clearing slowly bent forward, its branch arms reaching toward us, the forest around it began to stand up.